It's UofL Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. We're so glad you're joining us today. We're going to have a couple of really interesting topics that I hope you'll stick around to listen to. It's this show about all things UofL, great research, faculty experts, campus events, great students, and we'll have all of those things on today's show. So we'll carry on this show's tradition of letting you meet some of the top students at UofL a little bit later in the show. Today, a couple of McConnell scholars drop by to talk about their scholarship program, which is aimed at students who have an interest in politics and public service, and they're all Kentucky kids that are in the McConnell Scholars Program. We'll also talk to a UofL researcher who's doing research on the level of grief that parents feel after suffering a miscarriage or losing a baby. That's coming up shortly. But first, the University of Louisville has been named a military-friendly school for 6 straight years by GI Jobs magazine, and a vet-friendly school by another publication. UofL's worked hard at recruiting veterans as students to the school, as well as developing relationships with Fort Knox and other folks in the military. Renee Finnegan is let me get this straight, the Executive Director of Military Initiatives and Partnerships. Is that correct?
Perfect.
Did I get that all right?
You got it. I know, it's too long.
All right, Renee, welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. And we're going to be talking about all the stuff we're doing with the military and some veterans here on the show, okay?
Sounds great.
All right,
Thanks
so tell
for
me
having
what
me.
you do. What do you do?
Well, to make it shorter, I always say I'm the military liaison for Dr. Ramsey, the president of the university. He has asked me to make sure that, I'll just say the Board of Trustees had this office developed to support their strategic campaign for outreach, community outreach. So it's military that we reach out to.
Mm-hmm. And you're a former military yourself, right?
I am. I'm a retired Army colonel.
Okay. So you've got a little background in this.
Just 28 years. Just a little bit.
Okay, so they hire you to come in. Dr. Ramsey hires you to come in and do what? What are the different buckets that you're
Right. I categorize the military initiatives into 3 different categories. How are we going to help educate veterans? How are we going to help treat them? And how are we going to help employ them? And so I just make sure that any initiative that I look at is going to be a win for the university and a win for the military. And if it's a win-win, then we take off and initiate it. And I've had support. I've been here 4 years, and I have never had any dean, any professor, any staff at the University of Louisville ever say no when I've come to them and said, how would you like to do this new military initiative? And they've all said yes.
Why are schools like UofL, and I'm sure there are others that are reaching out to veterans, to the Fort Knoxes of the world? Why is there that impetus to try and get out and do partnerships with the Army, the Navy, and Air Force, or whoever, and veterans?
Well, a lot of times, as a veteran, a lot of people always ask me, how can I help veterans? Everybody wants to help a veteran, and they don't know how to do it. So being a university, and we're focused on education, it just partners perfectly with helping a veteran. They get out of the military. A lot of them have academic credits already. Mm-hmm. And University of Louisville will look at their transcripts. They'll give them credits for their military courses, their professional development courses. And I think that's part of the 6 years in a row. We're a military-friendly university. We look at transcripts. We welcome them. We help them transition. And we're close to Fort Knox, which helps. And I just think the city of Louisville also is extremely military-friendly. It's just a great... I'm not from here. Yeah. I'm from Florida. I got stationed at Fort Knox, and everybody told me as soon as I got there, you're going to stay in Kentucky.
And it's happened.
What? Here I am. I love it. I love it.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to the folks from Nucleus on this program. They talked a little bit about the Vet Start program, but why don't you tell us what that is? What is Vet Start?
Right. Vet Start falls under the employ. It's a 10-week program for veterans to start their own business. And they go once a week because usually they're working. So they'll go one night a week for 10 weeks. They have the greatest mentors in the world. Here we go again. It's the support of the city of Louisville and our College of Business, the mentors that they get that are professional business people. They get financial assistance. They get legal assistance. We pay for the course. Companies so far have helped me support these programs. So Toyota, Ford, and the Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs Trust Fund Committee have been the 3 places that have funded this program for 3 years now.
So these are veterans that are trying to get their own business off the ground. They come in and We give them support and say, here's a lawyer to tell you how all the legal stuff you need to start your business. Here's how to go find money, that kind of thing, and investors. And
we're the only one that gives them $1,000 startup funding to get going. And it's the only one in Kentucky, so we can kind of brag about that.
All right, let's talk about, you talked a little bit about Fort Knox. What about Fort Knox? What does U of L have in terms of partnership with Fort Knox?
Well, they have come to well, Dr. Ramsey has a military advisory board that he established about 4 years ago. And it's made up of the key leaders at Fort Knox, all the general officers and the hospital commander, garrison commanders, key academic leaders, our deans, and then, I call them civilians, community leaders. And they meet twice a year. They review all the initiatives, the current initiatives, and they look at other initiatives. So based on that board, I've had 2 of the general officers call me and say, I would like you to come out and teach a course to my civilian employees. I want it to be about leadership and communication. So our professional development center just went out and taught that this summer, a 7-week course. They had a project. The general said, I want it to be a project that is job related. And the 2-star just called me back and said, I've been briefed on the project. I am now initiating this into the program. It was a mentorship program for their civilian leadership. So, I mean,
so basically,
great program.
So U of L is offering education and training opportunities to the civilians. How about to the soldiers on that side of Fort Knox?
Same thing. A different 2-star general called and said, I own, this is General Combs, Major General Combs, who is the senior mission commander for Fort Knox and the commanding general of Cadet Command. She said, I own all of the universities, 275 universities throughout the nation, and all the Army ROTC faculty, the instructors, are hers. She said, I want them to be better professors. The College of Education, Human Development developed a curriculum. They just taught 82 of her faculty this summer. They now want 400, for us to teach 400 this coming summer.
So we must be doing a good job.
We're doing a fantastic job, and it's not me. It's our faculty.
We're talking, it would be Renee Finnegan, who's the Executive Director of Military Initiatives and Partnerships at the University of Louisville. We're talking to her about all the things going on between U of L and military and veterans. Talk about what we've got in terms of research, like PTSD and those kinds of things, veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and our health sciences campus and some of the researchers down there. They're doing some really groundbreaking research on that, aren't they, for the Army?
Absolutely. We had a program for 3 years, was for the wounded warriors. There's a warrior transition battalion at Fort Knox. It had almost 600 soldiers in it. It is, thank goodness, the soldiers are being reduced based on the war and the reduced deployments. But our College of Education had an exercise physiologist, PhD, that would go out with her master's degree students 3 times a week and develop programs for the wounded warriors, physical problems. So they wanted to get stronger. They wanted to be back in the fight. The letters that those soldiers wrote to those students saying, you've changed my life, I feel like I'm a soldier again. You know, you said it, we're doing great, and I don't want to say me, but the university and our faculty are doing wonderful things for the soldiers. That was one program. 2 years ago, we established a program based on General Tonini coming to me. He is the head of the Kentucky Army and Air Guard. So he owns the 9,000 soldiers and airmen in our state. He said, I cannot read about another suicide on my BlackBerry, Renee. What can you guys do? I went to our University of Louisville Depression Center, talked to the head, the chief, the chairman there. I said, what can we do? And he said, we are full. We can't take when we take a call now, it's packed. Our schedules are so packed. I said, well, let's create a program just for these soldiers and airmen. So that's what they did. They dedicated a clinical psychologist and a social worker just for those calls.
And that's ongoing? That's happening right now?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So a veteran can pick up somebody who just got back from Iraq, really depressed, considering
Yes.
suicide, pick up the
Yes.
phone and call U of L.
Yes.
Okay.
And that PhD, because I always check on the programs to make sure they're doing well, I said, how's it going? And he said, well, here's a statement from one of the female soldiers that I've been seeing. She said, I now, after your program, it's a 16-week program, after completing your program, I now feel safe to leave my apartment.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to be talking to your War College fellow coming up in a couple of weeks. He's going to be on the program. And real quickly, in 20 seconds or less, tell me about the spouse scholarships, the
Yes.
Army spouse scholarships that are available to people.
Right. The very first one came, we awarded it and established the program in 2012. It was, we want a military spouse to be able to go to college. They get $1,200 a month stipend. They get a full tuition paid for their master's degree. Our first spouse graduated in 2013. Our second one graduated 2015 with a 4.0. And our third one was just awarded this fall, and she's starting. So
They can apply through U of L's financial assistance office, or how do they?
no,
how do they
through the through Beth Bain, Dr. Beth Bain's office.
Okay, very good. All right, Renee Finnegan, appreciate it. Thanks for being on, talking about all the veterans and military initiatives that the University of Louisville has going on. And there's a bunch of them, aren't there?
There are many more.
All right, very good. When we come back, we'll talk to a U of L researcher who's studying the grief that women suffer after losing a baby. You're listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.
This is our time to soar. We are an unstoppable force of innovation and academic excellence, solving the world's mysteries through research, stimulating growth in our community and beyond, and inspiring the next generation of leaders to build a better future for all of us. We are the University of Louisville. Watch us take flight.
Welcome back to U of L Today with Mark Hebert. We're glad you're with us and joining us today. Got another researcher with us today, this one from the School of Nursing, the College of Nursing. It's Marianne Huddy. She's a professor and coordinator in the Women's Health and Family Nurse Practitioner program at the College of Nursing, and she's here to talk about a study she's working on. Welcome, Marianne.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being here.
You're going to have to get right up on that microphone, otherwise we won't be able to hear you.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about it. What is this study that you're working on? It's called Predicting Perinatal Grief Intensity.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, we've been doing research in this area for a very long time. This study is the last study we need in a series of research studies that will allow us to finish a screening tool that will help to identify parents who are at highest risk of having really intense grief responses after a pregnancy loss, miscarriage, stillbirth, or newborn death. And the reason that that's important is that many of the parents who have these really intense responses to grief responses not only have grief, but they also have other psychological issues that complicate that grief, like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, couple issues that can lead to divorce. They have more postpartum depression in their subsequent healthy pregnancy. They have more anxiety and depression in that subsequent healthy pregnancy. So there are lots and lots of issues that go along with this. And we're hoping that by using this, by having this tool developed finally, we'll be able to identify those parents who are most at risk and get resources and support to them sooner so that we can hopefully mitigate some of these more difficult outcomes for them.
Have there been studies, I assume there have, on what percentage of parents, and I assume we're mainly talking about women here, go into these really bad depressions and have that perinatal loss, that real sense of grief?
Yeah, well, about 1 in 4 women who are pregnant will have a loss of some kind. So it's very common. And of those women, the studies estimate that about 1/3 of them will
many?
Yes, will have a really difficult time. And so it makes it a very common and big problem for women in the United States. The studies are less clear about men. We know that men can have just as much difficulty, but we don't have as many studies that specify men.
Okay, we're talking to Mary Ann Huddy from the College of Nursing about her study on perinatal grief intensity. So are you in the midst of this study right now?
So what we're doing is we're recruiting participants for our study now, and we are grant funded in this research. So we're hoping to complete this by next summer, and then this instrument at that point will be ready to get out to physicians and to nurses to use for screening to help these families.
Do you find that most people, you said there were underlying issues, psychological issues that came up with people who maybe lost a child, but those losses, do they just exacerbate something that was already present? In other words, do most of these women who have these really deep sense of grief, did they already have some psychological problem before they had this loss, or is it just something that was brought on by the loss of the child?
Well, there's not really a lot of research that is clear on that. We know that.
So is that part of your research?
No, it's not part
Okay.
of ours. But in my own experience with people, who, I've practiced as a nurse and as a nurse practitioner for almost 40 years. And in my experience with these families, occasionally there are people who have psychological issues and then they have a loss, and certainly that can make it worse. But for many of them, they haven't had these problems before. And then they have this really difficult grief experience. And the problem with perinatal loss is that these are losses that are not recognized by our society. You know, the mothers and fathers recognize this as the loss of a child, but nobody else around them necessarily does. And so they have...
What do you mean by that?
Well, they have a miscarriage or they have a stillbirth. And for them, it may be the death of a son or a daughter. But nobody...
Since the child isn't born yet, it's not a child.
That's right. Nobody else will necessarily see that was what it was for them. And so they don't get the same level of support and recognition of their grief that you get if a child that has lived dies or if an older relative dies. And so there are no conventions for them. You know, nobody's bringing them food or encouraging them to take time off or, you know, recognizing that they're grieving and trying to be supportive of them. And so, in fact, there are people who say, you know, move on. What's the big deal? And so they feel really negated in the feelings that they have and feel abnormal sometimes for feeling like they feel, which is, you know, it brings on a lot of other things as a result.
And so when you finish this research study, you said you hope to get the information out to doctors quickly. So what information do you think doctors will need to know once you finish this research? What are you going to be able to tell them?
What this is going to do is it'll help to identify those parents, particularly at this point, the women who are most highly at risk of developing intense grief, and then it will give them some direction in terms of how to intervene, and it'll clue them in very quickly after the loss as to who needs additional support and follow-up. Because if 1 in 4 women who are pregnant are having losses, that's thousands, millions of women in the United States, and most places do not have the resources to follow all of those women. And to be honest, not every woman who has a loss needs that kind of follow-up. But the ones who do. So we want to make sure that the women who are really having intense grief and the fathers, the men and women who are having intense grief, get the follow-up that they need.
What role are your nursing students playing in this study?
I have 2 graduate students and an undergraduate student who are working with me, and they are going to be helping us recruit. They are going to be helping us analyze data. They are going to be doing their own sort of mini study within the study. They're going to be presenting their data and functioning as researchers within our team.
So I think this would be a good lure for students to come to the University of Louisville, isn't it? That you get to participate in this kind of research?
We are hoping so. Well, we hope to do is to get students excited about research so that they look at moving on to master's and doctoral levels in nursing, because we need more highly educated nurses.
And is there any place in Louisville right now, either at UofL or any other place that tackles this issue, that really has support services set up for women who come in and are just overcome with grief because they've lost a fetus, a baby, a child, whatever?
Well, I think the hospitals do a pretty good job while they're in the hospital. I'm working with 3 wonderful nurses from Norton Healthcare, one from Suburban and 2 from Norton Downtown, who are helping to, who are on our team and helping with this project. And they do a great job in those hospitals, as does Baptist East and, all the other hospitals. Once they're in the hospital, it's when they go home that they're kind of left to
their own devices.
Right, exactly. So there is a new support group here in Louisville that's out of Hesperus, and that is very helpful. But many communities have nothing. Once you get out of Louisville and Lexington, there's very little out there for people. And so, in this study, I've been recruiting from all over the world. I've got people from New Zealand and Australia and Japan and, all over the world. And they tell me that in a lot of their communities, there's absolutely nothing for them.
Wow. So how can somebody from Louisville that might hear this show contact you either about the study or about services that they might need?
They can just email me at marianne.huddy@louisville.edu or mhhutt01@louisville.edu, and I'm happy to either hook them up with services or tell them more about our study. We've, many women have contacted us who aren't necessarily eligible to participate, but we've been, that's one of the things my students have really been helpful with is figuring out what's available for them.
All right, and that last name, if you want to search it on the web, it's Hutti. There you go, correct?
That's it.
All right, Marianne Huddy from the College of Nursing at the University of Louisville. Thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you're listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.
This is our time to soar. We are an unstoppable force of innovation and academic excellence, solving the world's mysteries through research, stimulating growth in our community and beyond, and inspiring the next generation of leaders to build a better future for all of us. We are the University of Louisville. Watch us take flight.
Welcome back to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. We're glad you're joining us today. We're going to talk to a couple of, actually 3 very bright young college students in a second. The McConnell Scholars Program began 24 years ago and has attracted some of Kentucky's top students to the University of Louisville. It really is an amazing experience, and we're going to hear about it from these students. And they are Kevin Grout, Natalie Smith, and Chloe Zeller. Congratulations to being McConnell Scholars #1, to getting the big scholarship. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So who's going to tell me what the McConnell Scholars Program is?
I'll do that.
All right. That's Kevin, by the way, Kevin Grout.
So the McConnell Scholars Program was started in 1991 by U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell in the UofL Department of Political Science because Senator McConnell noticed a problem in Kentucky that he calls the brain drain. It was the best and brightest students of Kentucky were leaving the state and they were never coming back. So he wanted to found a program here at UofL that would attract the best and the brightest students, like you said before, and keep them at the University of Louisville, instill them with the history and the values of Kentucky, and really make them stay here for their career and their lives.
So the McConnell Scholars Program solely for Kentucky students?
Yes.
High school students from Kentucky. So where are you all from? Where's everybody from? Kevin, where are you from?
I'm from Boone County up in Florence.
Okay.
I'm from Louisville.
Okay.
I'm
Natalie?
from Elizabethtown.
Natalie from E-Town. Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, Chloe, let's talk to you first. What have you learned? I mean, you've been a McConnell Scholar now for what, 3 years? Are you a
I'm
junior?
a senior.
Senior. Okay.
I'm old.
Okay, you're old. Yeah. You're looking at old across the microphone over here, and it ain't you. So what have you learned?
Yeah, so the McConnell Center really is founded on liberal education and making sure that everybody gets education from all different facets of the realm, like every different aspect. And so I've learned a lot, mostly outside of the box of things that I would usually study. I have majors in Spanish, political science, and Latin American and Latino studies. So for me, stepping back into history and looking at things with context is something quite different from what I usually do. And so I've spent a lot of my time as a McConnell Scholar being able to look at that and look at, theorists like Plato and Aristotle and studying works that I otherwise would have had access to. And I'm really grateful for that because it gives me a nice foundational experience for the rest of my life and also for my collegiate career and moving forward.
And Natalie Smith, what have you learned? Well, what year are you as well? You're
I'm a senior as well.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Well, I think one thing that's really unique about the McConnell Scholars Program is that I think they told us in our freshman orientation that one of the things they focused on was teaching us how to think instead of what to think. So it's special in that it offers us an education outside of the classroom where there are no grades and we learn just for the sake of learning. So it's a really unique experience.
And Kevin?
I've got to agree with everything they've said, but the McConnell program really is, the thing I've gained the most is this great books program. They've taught us how to read again, taught us how to read things like Plato through Marcus Aurelius, just so many different texts that I don't think the average college student today really interacts with.
Now, as I understand, maybe we should back up a little bit. The McConnell Scholars Program, you either have to be a poli-sci major or minor. Is that correct? Or
That's right.
You have to be a minor.
you have to be at least a minor. Okay. So are any of you political science majors?
Yes.
But we all three have an additional major to go with that as well. Right. So we're all very unique in different ways too.
So what do you want to do with your poli-sci majors or your other majors or minors that you have? What do you want to do?
Still trying to figure that out. I think I'd like
You're
to go
a senior.
to. I know.
You're supposed to have
Now's
this
the time. I'm planning on going to graduate school for English next year. That's my other major in addition to political science, and I hope to eventually teach.
Okay.
Yeah.
A teacher. Good for you. All right.
I'd like to move to D.C. I did an internship in Senator McConnell's office over this past summer, and I'd like to move back there and continue that.
You want to get into politics?
I'd really like to, yes.
Do you want to run for office?
I don't know about that.
Yes, he does. He will.
I've run
campaign managers here, right beside you.
I've run on for SGA a couple times on campus and it hasn't turned out well. So maybe I stay behind the scenes.
Third time's a charm. Maybe run for an office that's a real like a constitutional office instead of a student government office. So you want to go to Washington?
Yes.
All right. And Chloe?
I actually just applied for Fulbright. I just submitted this week. And so if I get that, I'll be teaching English and working on leadership development in Colombia as the country moves out of a civil war. So that could be really cool for me because I've done a lot of research in that. But long term, I'm thinking international education and urban planning so that they can implement educational change into lower income communities, especially for immigrants, using my language.
Well, that sounds way too sophisticated for me. I'm a communication major. So
Well, see, communication important with language.
There you go. Language skills, that's right. All right, we're talking with Chloe Zeller, Natalie Smith, and Kevin Grout. They are McConnell Scholars at the University of Louisville. One thing we should mention about the Fulbright Scholars, I mean, the University of Louisville has a better track record than anybody else in being able to get students get Fulbright scholarships. So you got a good shot, I would think.
I hope so. We've had 2 in the last 2 years. I mean, we've had really good return rates for that too. So I'm excited and hopeful, but we'll see.
One of the things about the McConnell Scholars Program that I'm aware of is you do some traveling to China, correct? Isn't that one of the trips that every McConnell Scholar takes? So what was the experience like in China?
We just got back.
We just went this previous summer.
Okay.
So our class went, and they always go the summer after your junior year. We spent 4 weeks in China, in Shanghai, Beijing, and Xi'an. And it was a very unique experience. I think each of us were surprised by how different it was to the United States. None of us know Chinese at all. So we relied on our student guides most of the time. And it made things difficult, but we learned a lot about Chinese and politics and its relationship to Taiwan. And we established a really strong relationship with our guides and got to understand the Chinese culture. So it was a really eye-opening experience, and I'd say we're all thankful for it.
It also was like humbling coming from Louisville, which I feel like is kind of a big city. And then we went to Shanghai and Beijing have between 18 and 24 million respectively. And then they took us to a small town, and that was 10 million. That's more than New York City. So, I mean, that was just astounding. And to look at it from like environmental and political and economic, all these different perspectives was really, really cool.
And if the McConnell program is trying to teach us how to think, going to another country where I think people just think differently, you can definitely tell as soon as you step off the plane the difference in Western and Eastern thinking that occurs in China. And it took me 4 weeks to get used to it, and I'm still not sure if I am.
It was very cool, though.
And what's the purpose of going to China every year? What does the McConnell Scholars Program hope to get out of you and out of China when you come back?
I think the senator recognizes that China is going to be or is already a global leader.
Right.
And if the students from Kentucky are going to be the best and the brightest, not only in Kentucky but nationally, I would say that he thinks that you need to understand China and understand how to communicate what that culture is so that you can really form a dialogue with them.
Also, his wife is from China. She, Elaine Chow, and we have the ability to interact with her quite a bit too as McConnell Scholars. And So I think part of her goal and mission in the founding of it was to give us more of an international perspective as well, because we do focus on Kentucky, and Kentucky is relevant, but it's also important to look outside the box and outside the comfort zone, and I think this gives us the opportunity to do that.
Do you ever get asked by any of your friends or anybody, hey, you're a McConnell scholar, that means Mitch McConnell, being the big Republican that he is, he's just indoctrinating you. You got to be a Republican in order to graduate in this program. Do you ever get any of that kind of stuff? What do you tell people?
Well, yeah, I think offhand, whenever people don't know much about the program, that's what they assume. But Senator McConnell always tries to make it very clear that this is a nonpartisan program. And a lot of what we do, I mean, we have people from all across the political spectrum in the program, and it's just trying to focus on creating a dialogue and understanding different points of view, not creating many Republicans in the center. So.
And I think they do a really good job with that too, on like the seminars and the type of things that they allow for us. I mean, there's some that are more leftward leaning, there's some that are right, but none of it is like straightforward political type of stuff. You know, we're able to discuss historical things and other things that will kind of draw you apart from your ties.
Right.
And you can see that in the major speakers that the senator invites as well. He's had everybody from Marco Rubio on the right to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden on the left.
My next question was going to be about these speakers. Now, part of the deal with the McConnell Scholars Program is that you all get to sit in a room with whoever these guests are, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, et cetera, Marco Rubio, and have, half hour or an hour with them, just the 40 McConnell Scholars. Who has been your favorite person that you got to sit down with and talk to?
I think my favorite person was Da Aung San Suu Kyi, who came our sophomore year. She was
Explain who that is.
Well,
she's a democracy leader in the country
in Burma.
Right.
And she has a really strong relationship with actually Senator McConnell himself. He had traveled over to Burma to help establish democracy there many times before he met her.
Yeah, and she was just incredibly motivational, very soft-spoken, a very petite woman, but her message was just, it just made us feel like we could make a difference in our community, just looking at the massive difference she's made in Burma.
All right, Kevin.
My favorite speaker would probably be Senator Kelly Ayotte, the junior senator from New Hampshire. The week that she was here, and she's a military veteran and a big speaker on the Foreign Relations Committee. And the week that she was here was the week of Russia invading Crimea. And just getting to talk to her about that and getting her opinion on what was going to happen as that went forward, I think was unbelievable.
All right.
Mine is Samantha Power. She is the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And as someone who would like to work in that field eventually and, do international relations, that was just extraordinary for me, coming from so much international education experience, and she was just exceptional.
All right. One more thing before we get out of here. You've got an event coming up, I guess, tomorrow night, I guess, right?
Yes. October 20th, as part of our public lecture series, we are looking at the end of the War of 1812 and Indian dispersal and removal, and the event starts at 6 p.m. in the Chow Auditorium.
Okay.
In the Ekstrom Library.
The Ekstrom Library. All right, and that's open to the public.
Yes, it is.
Make that clear. It's not just for the McConnell Scholar students. All right.
Right.
All right, one last thing. What would you tell other students out there in Kentucky who are thinking about, where they want to go to college and if they're interested in politics? What would you tell them about the McConnell Scholars Program that they may not know?
Tell them apply for the McConnell Scholars Program because it'll open you up to a world of opportunities. I never thought that as a 21-year-old man I'd be in China. I never thought that I'd be reading these texts or talking with these leaders. The McConnell Scholars Program is going to take you places that you never believed.
All right. Any other advice?
Yeah, it's like I said too, it's not partisan. I mean, I have very different views from a lot of different people in the center, and no one is condescending or anything like that to you. And so you have the opportunity to be yourself and to grow for yourself and through the program, and it's just really extraordinary.
Natalie?
And even if you don't think you have a chance, it's still worth it to apply because you never know. I never thought I'd be here today, and now I'm the chair of the program, so I feel really fortunate.
And it's a full ride. That's the other really good part.
And
if you
go
get
Cards.
accepted. Go Cards.
Go
There you
Cards.
go. All right. Also, coming up this week, the Corn Island Storytelling Festival, sponsored by the University of Louisville. It's 2 days this year. You can find information about the Corn Island Storytelling Festival on U of L's calendar of events page, or just search Corn Island on the web. And tomorrow we'll be chatting with a U of L researcher who's trying to figure out why Kentucky kids are being prescribed Adderall, Ritalin, and other psychotropic drugs at a rate far higher than the national average. That will be on U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.